Hello, everyone. Bob Thibodeau here, and welcome to another Power Podcast Training Workshop session. Today, we're going to be talking about niching down your niche. Now, if you've viewed the training video on how to choose your niche, what we're doing now, that was the general overview, even though it was very specific in nature. Now, we're just going to dive a little bit deeper, because the deeper you can niche down, the better your results are going to be in your business. You may think that's counterintuitive. Well, I need to include as many people as I can and help them in whatever way I can. But if you're trying to talk to everybody, you're talking to no one. And you've heard that over and over again. And that's what we're going to be covering today. All right, so let me go ahead and share the screen here. And click on that. And there you go. And I'll turn my video off. All right, so niching down your niche. That's what you should be seeing on the screen right now. Now, what is the area, and you got this from the prior training, what is the area most people ask you to help them with? That gives you a clue about what your podcast could be about. It doesn't necessarily have to be that specific, but again, the deeper you can dive on choosing your niche that your podcast is going to be sharing about, talking about, then the better your opportunities are for being successful. So when you answer that question, this is just possibilities for your podcasting career. You don't have to be that exact. Let's say you're going to be a golf instructor and a lot of people ask you for advice on putting. That doesn't mean that's the only thing you can have a podcast on is putting. You can have a podcast on golf instruction, but your specialty, what a lot of emphasis will be put on, is the putting aspect. Now, the example I'm going to use today is, let's say you're an author and you're going to interview other authors, or your podcast is going to be about authors. So what you're looking at, different areas of books. You have fiction books. Nonfiction books would include travel, history, religious books, sports books, all these things. You can continue on with the list, but you get the idea that if you're going to have a podcast about authors, and you're an author, you could just talk about your different books, or you can focus on one aspect of books in general. You don't want to just talk about, I'll interview any author about anything, because when people are looking at your podcast, they don't really know what to expect with your next episode. That's why you need to niche down, and we're just going to talk about sports. Now, you could do book reviews. Before I get into that, you could do book reviews on people who have already written books, whether or not they are interviewing with you or not. If you enjoy reading a book, you could do a podcast about, I read this book called Personality Isn't Permanent by Dr. Benjamin Hardy. And, I've interviewed him on my podcast. That's why I can use that as an example. But you really enjoyed the book and you want to talk about it. You want to share with your listeners about this book. You can also interview other authors. As I just said, I interviewed Dr. Hardy, and I was going through on our podcast, the Kingdom Crossroads podcast. I now have broke down into a couple categories of collections of interviews. Over the last 3.5 years, I've done 160 author interviews. As far as episodes, published episodes, 160 interviews or episodes dealing with authors and book reviews and things like that. So that is definitely something that, if you're interested in interviewing people, authors are always looking to talk about their books. You can conduct interviews with subject matter experts, various, especially whatever your niche is. If it's sports, if it's religious, whatever, you can find someone who wants to talk about your niche. And that is great for the interviews as well. If you're just going to do a monologue show after show, sometimes it can get a little monotonous trying to find material, where interviewing others is a great way to keep everything fresh, even though you've been doing it a while. Like I said, I've interviewed 160 authors. Let me rephrase that. I have 160 episodes where I've interviewed authors. Some of them are multiple, like part 1, part 2. But every book is unique. Every author interview is unique. So it keeps everything fresh. Then you can compile those interviews into a series if you want to, because remember, your podcast is something that listeners are coming to gather and receive information that is pertinent to them. So if you did an interview with just pick Tom Clancy. I mean, I know he's passed away, so I use him as an example. If you had an opportunity to interview Tim Clancy, he's got all these books. Now, are you going to talk about each one, or maybe a group of them? The different series that he's written over the years. So you talk about that, and now you got 3 or 4 parts with each one a separate entity all on itself because of the subject matter of which he's written that book series about. And you could turn that whole podcast interview series into a series that your listeners would subscribe to and hold their attention with and help grow your listenership on your podcast. So again, these are just some of the examples that I gave you a few minutes ago: fiction, travel, history, religious, and sports. And we're going to talk about sports. Let's say you decide your podcast is going to be about sports. Well, that's a niche down, because out of all the different categories out there, you chose sports. So it seems like that's a niche. Well, it is. It's a general niche. But you got baseball, football, soccer, running, boxing. All these could be subcategories, major subcategories within the overall category of sports. Now, we're going to talk here about running. You decide you're going to do, well, I'm going to narrow it down from sports to running. I'm going to have a podcast all about running. Well, you're getting there, but you're not quite there yet, because there's different aspects of running. You got track, and track itself has, like the 100-yard dash, the 440 meters, numerous other running events, all involving track and field and things like that. So that's one aspect. So you got track, you got 5K races, you got 10K races, you got marathons, you got people who just want to run for weight loss or exercise and being healthy. So those are all subtopics. So you got the overall niche of sports, a major sub niche of running, and then you can actually go a little bit further and choose one of these other subtopics of 5K, 10K, marathons, weight loss, all that. Now, quick background on me: back in the day, I specialized in 5K races. When I turned 30, I found myself competing in a new age bracket. It was the 30 to 39-year-olds. Now, I was in the military at the time, and so I was already running a lot. And a good friend of mine got me involved in running a race in a local 5K race, a fundraiser or whatever it was. And I did well. I placed well. So I decided, this was fun and it'd be interesting. I seen, some of the trophies were like 2-3 feet tall for the winners and overall winners, and a couple feet tall for age group divisions and all that. So I kept running. I wasn't too far out of the competing for trophies and stuff. But when I turned 30, I became the youngster in the age group. And I was competing against people who maybe the same age, but more likely not. More likely they were older than I was, but yet they did not qualify for the 40 and above group. So I was the youngster and competing against all these people. And like I said, I was in the military at the time. I enjoyed running. I would get up at 4:30 a.m., go to work, and then run 3 miles as a warm-up before physical training started at 6 a.m. During physical training, we'd usually run anywhere from 3 to 5 miles. At lunch, instead of going to get something to eat, I'd usually put in another 3-4 mile loop. Then after work, when I went home, I'd run another 3 miles or so at home before I'd shower that night. If you add that up, I was running anywhere between 12 and 15 miles per day. And I was in shape. I was a lean, mean fighting machine, as they say. On weekends, I guess I was a glutton for punishment, because on weekends after I cut grass, if there was nothing special that I needed to do, I just tell my wife, well, I'm going out for a run, and I'd be back in a couple hours. I'd run up to the main gate of the post and back, which was 12 miles round trip, just for something to do on a Saturday. And I admit I was a little nuts back then. But, I was reading books on running. I was reading magazines on running. This is back before computers were popular. and I was learning how to be a faster and smarter runner. I was rotating my normally long runs with what I call strength days down on the track. I'd run 2 miles, quarter mile loop on the track. I'd run 2 miles alternating, sprinting for a quarter mile, and then jogging to catch my breath for a quarter mile. If I was out on the roads, I'd seek out hills and sprint up the hills and turn around and jog back down and do that 5 or 6 times on a run. On flat stretches, I'd pick out a telephone pole and sprint 2 or 3 telephone poles, then cool down by jogging 3 or 4 and doing it all over again. I'm telling you all this because these could all be subjects I could have started a podcast or a training program around. Now, I had no clue that podcasting wasn't even around back in the mid 80s, but if I was living now as I was back then, I could start a podcast or a training program around any one of these subjects. In fact, I kind of did start sort of a training program because I was helping my buddies become better runners so they could score better on their PT test that we had to take every 6 months. In fact, my 2-mile timed run for the Army physical training test went from about 15 minutes and 30 seconds down to under 12 minutes on a regular basis, 12 minutes for 2 miles. My best time ever, by the way, for 2 miles was 11 minutes and 30 seconds. But that's why when I turned 30, I began winning my age group almost every race I entered. I remember once I was winning the overall race. I was number 1. I had the police car in front of me as an escort, the whole thing. But I had started too fast and I knew it. But I was just trying to maintain my pace for as long as I could, hoping I had enough of a gap between me and the couple people that were way behind me. But with about a quarter mile to the finish line, my legs were just not going as well as they should have. And before we crossed the finish line, 2 others passed me. I finished 3rd overall, first in my age group, but I still went home with 2 trophies for the overall and the age group. But anyway, that's just a life story going down memory lane, I guess. But I digress. Anyway, why did I share all that? Well, one kind of reliving the past of my glory days. But point 2, and the main point, is that I did start a de facto training program, just helping my buddies get faster. And I specialized in the 5K. But when I was preparing for the police academy 13 years later, I implemented the same concepts that I used back when I was in the military. And I was one of the fastest runners in my class at the age of 45. This amazed all the instructors, so much so that a couple of them wanted to train with me outside of the academy class because we were all about the same age at the time. Now, here I am, a student teaching the instructors how to run faster. Talk about amazing. And some of these guys became good friends, and we remain friends to this day. On the end of this, I don't know why I'm going into all this, but on the end of this, the morning of May 12, 2007, I had run 9 miles at a 7-minute, 30-second pace per mile while training for my second Baltimore Marathon that was taking place that October. I had run my first marathon in 2006. I took off November and December to recover, and plus it's cold and wintry, so I just let my body recover. And then I started training again in January. Started off about 3 miles or so, and I built up to 9 miles at a pretty good pace by May 12, 2007. That night, I was severely injured working a major accident on the highway, and I have not been able to run since. I've tried a couple times, but I couldn't even make it down the driveway to the mailbox without pulling up lame. So I've had several knee surgeries and back procedures over the years because of that accident. But I know and accept that my running days are over. All right. But I'm saying all this because although I'm not a runner anymore, I can still help those that want to learn to run better or run faster and compete in races. I still know on the inside of me how to get that done. That's why I've talked about before, when you choose your niche, what's inside of you that you can help benefit others. That's a great idea for a training program, a podcast, things like that. So if I wanted to create a training program or a podcast centered around how to prepare for a 5K race or whatever, it would be a good fit for me. I speak the lingo. I understand the physiological and psychological aspects of running. I know the proper ways to prepare. So I could have a podcast around that subject. The point of all this is to show you You need to niche down as low as you can go. I didn't just pick running as my subject matter if I was going to set up a podcast or training program around that. I could do a general topic and then focus specific episodes or training programs for each. But what would I be known for? What is it that people would seek me out for? Just a general running coach? That's it. A little of this, a little of that. If I was doing a training program, what could I charge as a general fee? Because I wasn't considered a specialist. I was just a general running coach in nature. Think about the medical field. You have some choices on who you'll see typically. You have a general practitioner. It's your primary care doctor. You see this person for colds and scrapes and checkups and flu shots and, all vaccinations and all that stuff. But what if you were rushed to the hospital in the middle of a heart attack and the emergency room doctor said you needed to have immediate quadruple bypass surgery? But you're in luck. There's a cardiologist who just happens to be in the hospital making his rounds right now. We've already paged him. He's headed to the operating room to scrub up right now because you have to have this surgery immediately. You need to have it in like the next 30 minutes or so. Oh, by the way, this cardiologist is the chief cardiologist for that particular hospital system. I mean, coincidence that he just happened to be there at the exact moment you need this surgery? That's awesome, right? Would you argue with the ER doctor? Would you say something? Look, I'm sure this guy is good and all, but he doesn't know me like my doctor does. Can you just call my doctor and tell him I'd like him to do the surgery, please? Is that what you would do? I mean, your doctor may have assisted in some type of surgery when he was an intern or something, but that would probably be the extent of his heart surgery experience at best, right? The cardiologist has done hundreds, probably even thousands of these same procedures in his or her career. Plus, he not only has all this experience, he is good enough and highly respected enough that he's the chief cardiologist for that hospital or healthcare system. Your primary care doctor may charge a couple $100 for an office visit. A cardiologist may charge a couple $1,000 for an office visit. Maybe 10 grand or more for a surgery. And you are just one person. He may do 5 or 6 of these surgeries a week. Your doctor sees literally your primary 50 to 75 people per day, 5 days a week. And once the insurance companies get done, they're finished discounting everything, he may get $25 per person, from which out of that he has to pay his hospital staff, or not office staff, etc. The cardiologist, he charges a couple grand for the office visit, plus the 10 grand or so for the surgery just for him. He charges more because he's a specialist, not a general practitioner. You can and should do the same thing if you're coaching as a specialist and not a generalist. Why am I talking about coaching in this podcast training section? Well, that's a good question, because podcasting equals coaching, whether you realize it or not. You should have a podcast as part of your coaching program. Part of your coaching program should include a podcast. We've talked about using podcasts to build your authority status before, and it works. You should be reaching out to other specialists in your niche and interview them on your podcast. Have a specific area of expertise that you want to interview them about, and share that information with your audience. You'll be able to interview other experts and you'll be able to receive tips and techniques that they share that they typically charge their clients for. And you're getting it for free because you're interviewing them on your podcast. And in exchange, you're going to promote their coaching business or their books or whatever it may be, but you're getting these tips for free. And I've had so many people that I've interviewed, and then, the conversation prior to about your background and their background, and then you start the interview and it's being recorded, and then you wrap it all up and you have that, couple minutes that you're talking afterwards. And I've had several offer me their coaching services for free because they're so impressed with this podcast and the way I interviewed them and handle all that. So I've been able to receive great information, great tips, great techniques, great programs because of the podcast and because I conduct interviews and I interview these experts in their niche. You can do the same exact thing. You can improve your coaching program. You can leverage the quote unquote big name to improve your authority status and possibly increase your listenership because people recognize that big name, which as you increase your listenership, that could increase your coaching and client membership as well. So you need to be identified in your niche, whether that's website design, whether it's coaching, whether it's interviews, whether it's true crime stories, whatever your desired podcast niche is. That's the general category. Then, what area under the general category are you going to specialize in? What will be discussed? What will be taught? What will be talked about on almost every one of your episodes? That's your major subcategory. Then go one step further. Become known as a specialist in one area. You know, I know orthopedic surgeons. Lord have mercy, I know orthopedic surgeons. Okay, now their office handles shoulder, hands, hips, legs, feet, etc. But if I have a knee problem, I see one doctor in particular. If I have a shoulder problem, it is a different doctor. They are all doctors, right? But their major sub-niche is orthopedics, not cardiologists, not, dermatologists. They are orthopedic surgeons. Then each one of them has a specialty niche. You need to do the same thing with your podcast. For example, I'll go back to my running days really quick. If I had a podcast or a training program back then, the niche would be sports. The major sub-niche would be running, and my specialty would be the 5K training. Does that mean I could never talk to anyone about running 10Ks or marathon training? No, of course not. I could have an opportunity to interview a winner of the Boston Marathon or something, and we would be talking about marathons and marathon training. Some of that would still apply to 5K races that my audience is coming to me to hear about. The listeners would still get a lot out of that interview. But my specialty and the focus of my podcast and the focus of my training program would remain 5K running. But you're not locked into that's all you can talk about. Some of you just had that aha moment. I hope you're getting this pictured in your mind anyway, because it's vital for your success. If you want to join our weekly workshop sessions, because let me back up one slide. If you had that aha moment, you need to now zero in your niche, your subcategory, and your major niche, sports, major subcategory, running, and then your super niche down aspect, which for me in this example is 5K running. Do the same thing, and whatever your niche is. Do the same thing if you're doing book interviews, and that's what your book reviews, and you want to interview authors. Are you just going to interview any and all authors? Or are you going to narrow it down to religious authors? Are you going to narrow it down to sports authors? Are you going to narrow it down to true crime authors? Then go one step even further. Get this thing zeroed in as far down as you can without limiting yourself. Okay, as the example I just gave, I may be a 5K expert, but I would not have any problems interviewing people that are marathon experts, that have run marathons and won marathons and things like that, because the lingo is still the same. I can relate to them. They can relate to my background. You have that commonality, but your audience is also going to be inspired and receive great information from interviewing. If your niche in authors and all that is true crime, they will still get something out of someone else who may be a famous author not in the true crime category, but would still be interesting for your listenership. But that means 95+% of all your episodes should be in your major niche down area. Okay. Now, as I said, that concludes today's workshop. I hope you got a lot out of that. If you want to sign up for our weekly workshop sessions, just visit the website, www.podcast-training.com. And in the top menu, you'll see the workshop link. Just click on that and you'll be taken to the sign-up form. Group coaching members, and of course, one-on-one training members as well, get free access to all of the workshops, plus a private access page to review all of the training sessions we've conducted. And you will also receive a link to the replay of each session, each workshop session that you can watch at any time, so that you don't have to just worry about attending this live during the training time. Sometimes your schedule just doesn't work out that way. So you will receive a link to the replay of each workshop session that you sign up for. In addition, I have something very special for you. You are definitely interested in learning how to podcast or making your podcast better, right? Well, these workshops are designed to do that. But if you want to participate in our group training, where you can email me questions, you can jump on Zoom call. We can do that anytime we need to, as our schedules allow. If you get stuck on a certain step, things like that, because I want to give you a very special unadvertised bonus for attending this workshop today. That is a special discounted price just for group membership. If you go through the website, it's $497 one-time payment, no monthly payments. That $497 is for an entire 12 months of help and group membership benefits. This includes the weekly live calls, video replays of the training, and I can walk you basically by the hand to get your podcast up, running, and then tweak it to make it even better. But instead of the $497 is what you'd pay if you just went to the website, you can have a special discounted price of only $247 for the entire year. And just for those who are watching this workshop video, I will even go ahead and set it up on a payment plan. Okay, the monthly plan is $30 per month, but you're not locked into any type of contract. Okay, I do offer a 100% money back guarantee. For the annual plan, it's 30 days. For the monthly plan, it is also 30 days, but from the first payment. Okay, so once you continue on into the second month, the third month, like that, the 30-day guarantee no longer applies. But as I said, you do not have to stay in the training program for the entire year. You can quit 3, 4, 6 months, whatever. If you feel you've learned all that you needed to learn, you can quit the monthly plan at any time. Okay, sound good? Here's a little closer look at that screen of all the benefits of joining the coaching program. I'm also including, as a bonus, my podcast creation checklist and my ebook, Podcast Made Simple. That's a $37 value you'll receive for free by joining the group coaching program. Now, here's the actual link to the website offer so you can access this special offer. Again, it's not advertised on the website anywhere. It's only through you watching this video. Just go to podcast-training.com/special workshop offer and get signed up today. Okay, that's the conclusion of today's training, and I thank you for your attention on this. For those who are live right now, you get to do the live Q&A. That's one of the benefits if you sign up in the group coaching program, is you get to ask live questions once the training is completed. All right, so that concludes today's portion of the training, today's workshop on niching down your niche. That's Bob Thibodeau, and I will talk to you again very soon. Have a blessed day.